If you're enjoying Gems with Shom, follow the show. We're just getting started. Welcome to Gems with Shom, a show about beat digging, records, and other things. Today, I'm joined by Rich Medina. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks for having me.
This is a show about beat digging, and you've been one of the champions of this lens of music culture, so I knew we'd have a great conversation.
Awesome.
Yeah. You grew up in New Jersey, am I right?
Correct. Lakewood, New Jersey, to be exact.
All right. Paint a picture of what was around you growing up musically.
The things that were around me growing up musically was the fact that my mother's family and my father's family are deeply embedded in the church. So obviously gospel, and my maternal grandmother being a music director, and all of my grand uncles and both my grandfathers, they were all men of the cloth. So, my initial rooted relationship with music comes from the church. And beyond that, being a kid in the 70s in New Jersey, listening to FM radio at any given time, you're hearing specified mix shows based on a particular style of music. This is the days of 92 KTU and Frankie Crocker on WBLS, both really important New York City radio stations, Red Alert, of course. And then you had the whole Philadelphia legacy with Power 99 and Butterball and Philly International. So, it was a real healthy melting pot of music. It wasn't so genre focused or genre specific as we know it to be today, at least in terms of listening to FM radio programming. And in the public, a house party is a house party is a house party. Same thing for block parties. Same thing for school dances. Traveling to another town to go to somebody's block party. So my musical influences as a kid were really, really wide. Obviously rooted in Black music, particularly soul, jazz, funk, all the American canon of Black music, but having friends from the Caribbean, having friends from West Africa, having friends whose family is from South Africa and other parts of the world as well. So being a music lover, blessed to have been able to get a taste of a lot of different styles of music.
Amazing. Any memories come to mind when you think of the people around you, whether it's friends or families or otherwise, that really stood out to you personally?
Yeah. The first person to stand out to me musically is my mother's youngest brother, my Uncle Jimmy. My Uncle Jimmy was a manic depressant and considered special needs in school, but he was also a bit of a savant, meaning that could listen to a song and Uncle Jimmy could play it back to you on the piano. I remember many weekend afternoon sitting in my grandparents' house watching my mother and my grandmother cry, listening to him play back songs from listening to a record or listening to it on the radio. After him, I would have to say Johnny Holmes, my sister's first husband, who I call my brother-in-law to this day. He was a bit of a local DJ phenomenon in my neighborhood. Had a regular job during the week, but on the weekends he was DJing at the VFW and at the Elks Club and parties in the firehouse for the vets that were in town, or the firefighters or police. He was deeply associated with entertainment in those spaces, and they lived in the same house as me and my mom my entire childhood. So um, yeah, every weekend from as long as I can remember, I'm watching him prepare a small carry-on suitcase full of records to go play music at one of these places, and definitely put a battery in my back at a very young age.
I mean, that's an incredible backdrop. Not only what you're exposed to, but the feeling of it all.
Yeah,
When you were a young person, right? You're watching this individual, a DJ that you look up to, as a family member, and you're standing there watching him. What was going through your mind?
the thing that was going through my mind mostly in the beginning was my grandparents don't like this. This is devil music to my grandparents. To us, it was a delightful escape from being inundated with gospel, and the fact that my grandmother was a choir director, the back line for the church bands in my grandparents' garage. We were swimming in Five Blind Boys and Mahalia Jackson and James Cleveland records and Martin Luther King speeches, all things that were designed for the forwarding of Black culture and for forwarding of belief in a higher power. And, watching him deal with secular music with such care, it was a way for me to see that you can go to church without setting foot in a church ever. Some people go to the speakeasy to find God. Some people go to a nightclub. Some people have, there's vices and habits of all sorts. So it really showed me that there's a way to some kind of salvation other than going to church.
I think it's interesting you mentioned the view of your grandparents on that. I think with every generation, with time, I kind of realized there's an element of rebelliousness in young people that never stops. I think that's good. That keeps culture moving forward in different ways. Yeah.
Sure. 100%.
Yeah. So you have this incredible backdrop of people, influences, music, growing up, family, friends, the radio, everything. And it's also an incredible time of music. When did you start DJing for other people?
First time I ever played records in public as a booked DJ was middle school, uh, eighth grade, actually, seventh grade. Getting to DJ a Sadie Hawkins dance at my middle school. For anybody unaware, Sadie Hawkins dance is a dance where the ladies have to lead. It's the girls that approach the guy that they want to dance with, not the traditional man seeking out a woman to dance with. So my first time playing publicly for real, was Lakewood Middle School Sadie Hawkins dance. Prior to that, I was chasing Johnny, as I mentioned, and I think in any neighborhood as a kid, you have your choices of who you can follow or who moves you. You can follow the hustlers, you can follow the tough guys, you can follow the pretty boys, the athletes, or the creatives. And, for me, my focus landed between the athletes and the creatives. And some of the older boys that played basketball at my high school, predominantly Scorpio, Bassie, Reality. Um, it was just so cool to see the way that people gravitated to them because of the way they strung records together could put people on one accord. And for me, it was always that art of storytelling across the span of time that really sucked my attention in, and it's been a snowball roll downhill ever since.
Very well put. Very well put. When I bring up the name King Brit, what comes to mind for you?
King Brit, uh, man, genius, uh, light years ahead of his peers in terms of studiousness and knowledgeability. Just a very cosmopolitan mind and a very open musical mind, particularly in the area of electronics and electronic production. I think King Britt remains to this day one of the visionaries of our generation, and feel really blessed to be able to call him a friend.
Awesome. Awesome. So I may not be going in chronological order, but tell us when you started DJing, let's say in clubs or for parties in a broader scale.
When I started DJing at clubs and parties on a broader scale,
Yeah. Beyond your high school dance, your middle school dance.
yeah, well, by the time I got to college, I was a very active DJ. Aside from the fact that I went to college to play basketball, um, but while I was there, I realized very quickly that academically, I was really normal. At public high school in the middle of New Jersey, just having a good memory will make people believe that you're a fantastic student. And then you get to a campus like Cornell University and you realize, like, holy shit, you know, my memory is bonkers, but I'm nowhere near as learned as I thought I was. And that reality showed its face at, like, I think I failed my first 5 exams, five different subjects just failed, not really knowing how to study, not really knowing how to ingrain and embrace information for the sake of testing. So with that being the case, it was very clear to me early on that DJing while I was there was going to be difficult if I wanted to play and if I wanted to pass classes. So instead of DJing, we threw parties.
Okay.
And I ran part of the production arm of a group of guys that we called ourselves the G-Key Brothers. What was it? 12 of us, let's say. We'd put in $50 a piece, go to the wholesale depot, buy a bunch of bottom well liquor, make a whole bunch of jungle juice and all these different drinks, and rent out frat houses and throw parties. And I was one of the people that played a role in the sonic side of the whole thing, the setup, where speakers were placed, size of the sound system versus the space, all the technical DJ components. That was part of my job in that. So I remained adjacent to the game even through college, but I got out of school, played a really mediocre season of pro basketball, got hit with the reality that 90% of college athletes get hit with, that you've now hit your head on the ceiling. This is as far as you're going to go in this situation. And I took a job offer in Philadelphia. When I got to Philadelphia, I found out through some friends that a dear brother of mine, Mike Celestin, also known as DJ Mike Nice, was going to the Audio Institute in Philadelphia. So immediately I hooked up with Mike, because before I put a single piece of furniture in my apartment, I went home and got my turntables and got my records and all of my equipment. And that was my shrink. I just went from a burgeoning pro basketball career to driving a Chevy Cavalier, listening to a guy that's a company man that if it wasn't for the degree and the suit and the reason we were together, he'd be scared to death of me. So I was depressed, majorly depressed. And bumping into Mike and I DJed together in high school. Mike is in Philadelphia going to the Audio Institute. Mike is still actively DJing in a crew called Soundboy Entertainment. I think day one of us hanging out, I'm like, yo, like, how can I be down? Basically. And Mike and Lizelle and Randy pulled me in. And the next thing you know, we're DJing a lot of the Black Greek letter organization events across the city at all the colleges. And a particular focus on rocking at Temple because a lot of my friends from New York City, or a lot of people I was affiliated with loosely, were from New York City that were going to Temple. We were from North Jersey, and we had very much a New York City party mindset. So DJing in earnest after high school and college was immediately diving into a mobile DJ crew with three guys that, praise God, I can say are still dear friends of mine to this day.
That's so interesting. I mean, you've touched on a lot of, let's say, unique parts of you: athletics, university, going to a great school, DJing kind of throughout the whole time, people around you. You seem like you really speak with a lot of reverence around your friends or like the people around you. Like you give them a lot of credit. One part that we didn't touch on is your interest and your focus on poetry. When did that come to being central for you?
In high school, I took Latin because I thought I wanted to be a doctor. All prescriptions are written in Latin. It's a short sighted approach, but that was my
Yeah.
reason for taking the language. And my high school Latin teacher, all 4 years, was a beautiful lady by the name of Mrs. Kirshner. And Mrs. Kirshner was the person that showed me the difference between studying and having a good memory. And Mrs. Kirshner said to me my freshman year in high school, Rich, you're a good kid, you're a good student. I think you're really going to go far, but you have to take better notes. You can't think that all the things that you're going to learn, you're just going to be able to retain it between your ears. So I want you to remember that if you ink it, you will think it. And from that moment, I started keeping a journal, started writing to myself. What happened today? How am I feeling today? Ideas, drawings, doodling, planning, whatever, however much a kid, 14, 15 years old could plan. But that was my entry to poetry personally. And I didn't share that publicly until I got to Philadelphia. And within the first 6 months of getting to Philadelphia in 1992, I get invited to a place called the October Gallery. And the October Gallery was owned by the Red Cross family. And it's one of the most prominent Black-owned art galleries on the eastern seaboard of the United States at the time. And Lamar Red Cross, the son, he would throw an event every Friday called Panoramic Poetry. I walk in that room, and that's where I meet Ursula Rucker, Oversoul 7, also known as Sabela, um, Trapita Mason, Stephanie Renee, um, Jill Scott, all the active poets of the day in Philadelphia. And at the end of the very last reading, the first reading I went to, at the end, Lamar, as it was his typical fashion, would pan the room and say, "Does anyone else have anything to share?" And my friends that had come with me are sitting beside me and behind me going, next thing I know, I'm in one of my journals stuttering through my own writing in front of a crowd for the first time. And I'm no stranger to public performance. I played basketball my entire life. Been DJing. I've been a b-boy, an active club kid. No stranger to public appearances, but that was a whole different animal, because now it's your innermost thoughts. It's the way you string ideas together. Does it sound as good when you say it out loud in front of people you don't know as it felt when it came out of the pen? And the response that I got, oh man, it was just like a therapeutic thing that I couldn't have possibly accounted for without having the experience. And again, here goes another snowball rolling down the hill.
Yeah. No, thanks for sharing that. If we were to go back on that moment, I want to touch on that because it's fascinating to see someone, let's say at that stage of life, um, opening up and doing something publicly. What was going through your mind as you're up there standing in front of these people?
Holy shit, I never did this before. Fuck. you know, can't believe this motherfucker called my name. Fuck. You know, and at the same time, a legit spark of excitement and my own curiosity about watching this room full of people deliver all these heartfelt sentiments, whether they're doing it a cappella as someone that's memorized their work, or if they're reading out of a book or reading out of a journal, all these different voices and all these different approaches to poetry. And like, where do I fall in line with all of that? I saw some amazing stuff. I saw some stuff that was really seasoned and professional. I saw some really raw talent that was just kind of coming out of their shell. Where do I fall on that bell curve? Just being an athlete, being a competitor. You never really come to participate. I came to get a win. So trying to figure that out as I'm stuttering through my own words. I
Yeah.
realized how sloppy my handwriting was until that night.
Uh, Looking back all these years later, do you think something changed for you at that point?
Absolutely. I think I became a poet that day.
Yeah.
I became a poet at October Gallery in front of some people who are iconic in that world now, like your Ursula Ruckers and your Sabelas and your Jill Scotts and, Lamar Manson, also known as Black Ice. All these people were in that room, and we remain friends to this day. And we talk about each other's work and each other's writing when we get a chance to this day. So, yeah, it shifted my gears in a major way.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. I think sometimes like the context of time makes some of the dots connect. So I wanted to just live in that for a moment with you.
Nice.
You're affiliated with the Zulu Nation and the Rocksteady crew. What do those affiliations, what do those crews mean to you?
to be acknowledged and recognized by founding organizations that were formed in the street in a state that I didn't grow up in, but is tied to a perspective and an approach to life that I embraced as a child is priceless. You know, at 8, 9, 10 years old, trying to figure out how to do a windmill or trying to figure out how to do a 6 step or how to pop or boogie correctly, and watching these New York City kids do this thing and become famous for it. And then for it to go to downtown New York and to go to Broadway and the movies, and to grow up in a time where commercial media caught up with this cultural phenomenon that is mostly noted as being born in New York City. But, I'm from 40 minutes down the highway in central Jersey, and we had our own Crazy Legs and our own Grandmaster Flash and our own Grandmaster Flowers. The culture was running rampant up and down the Eastern Seaboard. So to become a grown man and to be inducted into either of those organizations speaks volumes to me about hard work and adhering to the tenets of the culture, understanding that hip hop is much broader than rap music. It's a lifestyle, it's an approach, it's a methodology to solving problems. To be recognized and inducted into those two organizations are pinnacle moments for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Salute. I think that those cultural movements uh, have a sense of community too. It helps people develop and inspire people. And I think that's, at least in what you've mentioned today, it's like a theme in a recurring thing, kind of celebrating other people, respecting other people, building off of each other, having that kind of momentum.
And iron sharpens iron, man.
Yeah.
You're not going to get any better working out in a gym where you're the toughest guy there. You're not going to get better. You may beat these guys up till kingdom come, but your skill set has plateaued. B-boying, DJing, graffiti, MCing, and basketball, they go together.
Yeah.
Every rapper wants to dunk a basketball. Every guy that can dunk a basketball wants to be on stage in front of a crowd, whether you know it or admit it, even or not. And the reason they go together is because they all encompass a vocabulary about rhythm and cadence, pace, timing, when to go at 100% speed, when to go at 20% speed, how to gauge an opponent, how to size up an environment, how to read the room, understand the space that you're occupying and where the difference between where you want to be in that space and where you actually belong. I think the components of hip hop culture represent that at the highest level, especially for a kid coming from a middle class or quote unquote lower background. When you looking for something to attach yourself to, that's believable. That the people, elders in your family might look at you and say, well, how are you going to make money at that? But if they see you're vested and you got your nails dug into it and it's something you really believe, it's also fantastic to them that you're not in the street doing something else. So with Zulu Nation being formed by the former leader of the Black Spades, who found his knowledge of self and decided to change the vocabulary of how his organization behaves, or the Rocksteady crew with a bunch of dudes that were doing the best that they could with what they have in the Bronx, and found a creative physical outlet via a dance style that is now It's as American as apple pie, you know, and it's as international as language. So, you know, it's enormously important for me.
You're a multidimensional person. You lecture at universities and other cultural institutions. Tell us about that part of your life.
My entry into education began in earnest in 2012. I went back to Cornell for my 20-year anniversary, and I was invited to the Olin Library by Catherine Regan and Ben Ortiz. Catherine Regan is the head curator of the Rare Book and Manuscripts Library at Cornell, and Ben Ortiz was her assistant. And the two of them are the backbone behind the Cornell Hip Hop Collection, which is the largest collection of rare and at risk materials based on the culture in the world. I had heard about the acquisition in '06, and just a quick background for that. In '06, you familiar with the book Born in the Bronx?
No.
It's a fantastic book, coffee table book out there called Born in the Bronx. The book is by Johann Kugelberg, former Warner Records executive, major player in the New York City art gallery world, and a gentleman by the name of Joe Conzo. Joe Conzo is largely known as the man who took hip hop's baby pictures. They created a book called Born in the Bronx. Johann Kugelberg and Joe Conzo took the raw materials of that book to every institution of higher learning within the 5 boroughs in New York City, looking to create an archive. Got a bunch of doors slammed in their face. When they got to Cornell, Catherine Regan was like, "What? All those institutions turned you down? They didn't want to engage in this? We'll take it." And that's the birth of the Cornell Hip Hop Collection in 2006. Fast forward 6 years later, I'm on campus for my 20-year anniversary, and I get a call from these people. I'm like, Olin Library is on the art squad. Why? I didn't go to arts. I got a business degree on the agriculture and life sciences campus. I walked through the art squad to get to food or to get to practice or get to my class on the other side of the campus, but I don't have any affiliation with this building. But let me go see. I'm here. It's my 20-year anniversary. I go and I get down there, and they're like, "We have been looking for alumni who are deeply, legitimately associated with hip hop culture, and you're one of the very few people we came across, if not the only person we came across as a modern graduate who is affiliated with Rocksteady, affiliated with Zulu Nation, and you're actively in the street breaking bread with people who are considered pioneers of this culture. And we would like to invite you to become a member of our advisory board."
That's
So I was the
incredible.
first alum invited to the advisory board. And on the advisory board, it was, you know, Martha Diaz, Michael Eric Dyson, Professor Steve Pond. There's a litany of names that I'm not going to be able to call them all right here, but none of them were Cornell graduates. So it was very heartwarming for me to be invited inside of such esteemed academic company. And my first question when I got there was, "Okay, so where's the curriculum?" And nobody had an answer. It was just a lot of academic talking heads ruminating about how to acquire more materials, What books are important to the culture? What does the culture even have a tone? Actually, no, it doesn't. You know, every other genre of music has a tone. You know, hip hop didn't at the time, unless you consider KRS One's Bible of Hip Hop a tone, which some do, and incredibly so. But my asking about curriculum gave me an opportunity to have a one-on-one with Professor Steve Pond. Professor Steve Pond is the man who wrote the book Headhunter, the book about Herbie Hancock's Headhunter album, the first platinum selling jazz album ever. Professor Steve Pond wrote that book. He's also a seasoned drummer and percussionist and ethnomusicologist. And Professor Pond was like, you know, the way that you explain things and the way that you break things down about the culture is so experiential. You know, I'm just an older white guy who loves the culture and who has studied it to the best of my depths. But you're out here living it. And I've had a bunch of guest lecturers in my class, but something about the way you break your points down, I would love to put that in front of my students. So the first time I ever taught a class at the college level was as a guest lecturer in Professor Steve Pond's Beats, Rhymes, and Life class. And that was 2012. And I went on to teach next to Professor Pond and next to Catherine Regan and Ben Ortiz in the library for the next 2 or 3 years. And that led to an opportunity for me to entertain an opportunity to teach at the Barnes Foundation in Philadelphia, which large thanks to a dear old friend of mine, Jamie Merwin, who was on the inside track there already. And they were looking for people to teach about Albert Barnes's life, because Albert Barnes is largely noted as, well, I take that back. He's not largely noted, but for those who know, Albert Barnes created the first integrated workspace in the United States. It's one of the first spaces in his chemical company where black men could work on the same floor as white women. And his storied history with the Philadelphia art establishment, his collection of African art, and how his first art show was panned by the establishment because of all the African elements in it. His relationship with Elaine Locke and W.E.B. Du Bois and people who were wrapped around the Black education movement, whether you're a Booker T. Washington mindset or a Du Bois mindset. Albert Barnes sat in those spaces, and he was a large part of the birth of the Harlem Renaissance. And where's hip hop born? On paper, in the Bronx. So there's this history of slavery, emancipation, great migration, white flight, people of color settling in areas like Harlem and the Bronx, and how that all led to someone like me having the life that I have today. And I was able to teach at the Barnes for 4 years, going back and forth to Cornell to teach from time to time, different semesters. And it all culminated in me teaching a full semester at Lincoln University, uh, basically doing a hip hop 101 course for freshmen and sophomores. And
I mean,
a bunch of speaking engagements and lectured at Amsterdam Academy for Theater and Dance, Montreux Jazz Festival, did a lecture on Fela Kuti there, interviewed Arthur Baker there, And it also really was a stark reminder that, you know, the whole notion of a DJ and a master of ceremonies going together usually means two people. And it gave me the chops and the wherewithal to go from keeping a journal to writing poetry to performing poetry to recording it on albums and on voiceovers and commercials to teaching at a public institution to now landing in an ownership position at Dante's HiFi and teaching other DJs how to use their voice as their own master of ceremonies to explain to this room what's your purpose is here, why are you here, what are you doing, who are you, what was that record, why should that record mean something to me. All of this has allowed me to land where I am today.
It's incredible because I don't know if you could have planned that path you just explained, right? Some of these opportunities didn't exist before you made them happen, and nor
Right.
was it exactly linear, but it shows
Right.
something about you. There's a competitive spirit that comes up throughout all of these stories. And I think it's extremely important, the academic element, and maybe underrated when I was a kid. And I think it's really important because of the entertainment, the education, the historical archival element, the
Mhm.
storytelling, and it also gives a lens of legitimacy to people who might not understand it, which is
Right.
also important. So
Right.
I think it's really great what you're doing.
It's one thing for you to say something that, yeah, maybe it's true, but if you can't back it up with sources, is it true? Even if it is true, is it your opinion or is it fact? Is it historically precise or are you waxing poetic? You know, and I can't give enough credit to my high school basketball coach, John Richardson. Coach Richardson's like, find a way, son. When you're in this gym, you're going to do it my way. There's 32 doors here. You can hit any of them at any given time. But when you're in here, you're going to find a way to get it done because you got more in you than you think. Just when you're ready to tap out and you're ready to quit, you probably got 40 more percent in there. And my job is to show you how to get to that 40%. So you have to be thorough. You have to do things in a complete fashion. If one of you doesn't touch the line, everybody's doing push-ups. If one of you is dragging ass, you're all going to pay for it. You have to hold each other accountable and raise each other up so that we can win some games here. And just carrying that vocabulary with me everywhere I go has helped me a ton.
Yeah, yeah. And like I said, it comes through when we talk about these different parts of your life. I don't think it can be easily planned. I think these are qualities that have come out to benefit you over time. I mean, you're
Yep.
an artist, you're a DJ, you're an orator, you're a writer, you're an intellectual, and in a way, you are an entrepreneur. I mean, you're part of businesses. Like that's things that you've gone into, and I would bet throughout these decades of doing this, it wasn't always easy. I bet there are points when you were maybe down in the basketball game of life by more than 10 points.
Oh, for sure.
So
Very little time on the clock. In your mind, not enough time to win. But
yeah,
actually, you find that 40%, you can get to that dub, but you got to lock down, you know?
yeah. Yeah. I like that. No, it's important because a lot of people listen to the show, sometimes younger people, sometimes older people. And I just think always looking to that next phase of life because you don't know what's going to happen. Your best phase could be what happens next. And that doesn't necessarily end at the age of 30, 40, or 50. You don't know when your next phase is going to be. And if you have this drive, it could be what happens next.
Yeah, man. I mean, as a guy that's in his mid 50s, age really is just a number. I feel like in some ways I'm just getting started. And, remaining studious, I think is a lost art. I think a lot of us adults, once you get your diploma or you get your degree and you go on and you get a job, you know everything. Now you just got to show up every day, and that becomes the drudgery of work. 'Cause you think you know everything. So you're going in here and repeating this cycle of actions to keep your boss happy and to make the company money, but you're miserable. You're not enjoying it. I think most people who are unhappy in those spaces have stopped taking on new information. So they're bored, or frustrated, and that can break people. I've watched it happen in my own family. And, you know, being born in 1969 and being first generation of my family that could vote, first generation of my family that could shit on the same toilet as a white man. I could walk in the front door of any building that I wanted to. My friends and I who discuss these things have never taken that lightly. In some ways, I'm privileged compared to my mom and my dad or any of our elders. They didn't have the luxuries and the creature comforts that we have. As hard and as tough as our life may or may not have been, to actually be born into a space of having some civil rights, big deal.
Thanks for sharing that. And all of these kind of historical points, I think it's important to touch on. So I appreciate you sharing all of that. I actually first heard of you in the kind of maybe 2005, 2006 timeframe. I had just moved to New York, and I don't know how I stumbled upon APT, but I started going to APT a lot.
Mm,
And my feeling is like this is the best party experience I've ever seen in my life. The people I met, the music I heard, the fun I had, everything. I mean, it's never been quite duplicated. Part of that was like where I was in my life.
mm.
And you've gone on to have many parties, but tell us about that time at APT, which I believe went on for many years.
Yeah, APT was basically a 10-year run, basically the end of 2000 to the top of 2010, for argument's sake. And, you know, APT represented an opportunity for me to prove to New York City at large that I'm dead serious about what I'm doing. And I've always loved and admired this cultural aspect of New York City. And I want a seat at that table. And I had done my fair share of things in New York leading up to that via my relationship with Stretch and Bob, via basketball, via all the opportunities that came about through all of those things, interning in New York in the summertime while attending Cornell. But then there came a point where I was being presented with an opportunity to own an event, to have a night at a brand new establishment to myself. And I've told the story 1,000 times, but the first 5 years that I was at APT from 2000 to 2005, I didn't have any guests. It was me from 9:30 at night till 4 in the morning, just digging my nails in, figuring out how to tell an album's worth of a story over the course of 5 or 6 hours in a night. Pace, energy, ebbs and flows of a room, the waves of the people come in waves. How do you upshift and downshift your musical perspective over the course of a 6-hour set? And really established a foundation for myself and I think some others about what it is to really own and drive a DJ residency from the ground up. And Yeah, it's one of the most priceless times of my life. You know, it was the window. I was becoming a man, and New York City at large was beginning to recognize me, whether it was fellow DJs, other people in the nightlife, other people in the arts, period, random passersby that tripped over us. All of a sudden, my name is really embedded. And, you know, I was writing for the Fader at the time. I was doing a great deal of things outside of APT that were cementing I was still playing heavy summer league ball in New York City. So I started to develop a reputation kind of as an honorary New Yorker, even though I wasn't living there. And it changed everything, changed my life completely. I knew that I was where I'm supposed to be in life 3 years into APT.
That's fantastic. It's like you found your groove there. You found your kind of validation. You proved yourself as a DJ and on multiple levels.
Found
And
my tribe.
yeah, yeah.
And, you know, it was contrary to the belief of people who didn't have the opportunity to experience it. It's a small room. So I didn't have to be a rocket scientist to fill the space. You know, if I can get 75 people in here per night, I won. Now my job is how many of them can you keep? Or if I got 75 at 10 o'clock and 50 of them split at midnight because they got a job in the morning, is there another 50 coming to fill that hole? And sure enough, there was. You know, I had to learn how to deal with that. You know, you're tired 3 hours in, and somebody comes fresh off the couch or fresh off the train, brand new energy, haven't even had their first drink yet. What's the relativity? How do I make a connection with this person? You know, studying that dynamic at APT, it's really elevated my game tenfold.
I, as a person, like I said, just moved to New York. When I started going there, I couldn't believe how much fun it was. I was both enjoying myself, learning about music I didn't know sometimes, which was great. And it was small, intimate, and looking back, it was star-studded. I mean, it was full of essentially hip hop legends, music legends.
Yeah.
They were just there, and it made me think, wow, New York is the best city in the world. And now looking back, I think it was just that party was amazing. I don't know how much of that still happens today, but it was an incredible experience. I remember hearing the band, the record Cortex there for the first time upstairs. I was like, holy shit. And I
Hmm.
couldn't believe my ears. I was just like, this is incredible music. And I don't know how you duplicate that. It was amazing.
Yeah, it was one of the last bastions of the old New York, you know, a place where stars and celebrities and major public figures. One of the most beautiful things about New York in the from the 70s through the 2000s was that depending on the venue, you're going to go in there, you're going to see people that just flew into town, you're going to see old bankers, you're going to see young fashionistas, you're going to see some goons, you're going to see some people who can really dance, and you're going to be see some people who are just mavens of the culture, and they're just going to walk right by a superstar in a club because they feel like, no, this is my place too. I didn't come here to celebrate you. I came here to get my release. Thank God someone of your stature also finds a release in this. So it's kind of like a leveling of the playing field. Even your brightest megastars wants to go to a watering hole where they feel comfortable and they can let their hair down and not have to be in character.
Yeah. It was an incredible time. What has traveling the world as a DJ taught you?
Traveling the world as a DJ has taught me that there's a great deal of truth in the words of the great Marshall Jefferson, in that house music, his statement was house music is a language spoken and understood by all. I learned through traveling the world, you can take the word house off the front of that sentence. And music as a whole is a universal language spoken and understood by all. You know, something about rhythm, cadence, melody, and harmony that is an amazing concoction for bringing people together.
Well phrased. I like to hear that because, I mean, you've shared a lot of different parts of your life, and to see your success at this time as one of the most popular DJs in the world, it's great to see. And like I said, I imagine it wasn't always a straight road. So it's great to see that at this point in 2026.
It's a long and winding road, man, but you gotta have faith in your ability to drive. You gotta have faith in the machine that you're driving, and you gotta have people around you that are sharper than you. You gotta have people around you that have more experience than you that can give you information and give you data that you need when you're in these moments of doubt, like you talked about before. The vast majority of my career, I've quit the business 5 times a week. Like, fuck this, man. What am I doing here? And somehow, some way, through some kind of guidance, through the voice of someone that I trust or someone that has some kind of faith in me, you end up realizing that, yeah, okay, you're just mad right now, or you're just hurt right now, or you took a couple of L's back to back. You're not out of the game. It's not over. Unless you want to quit. And who loves a quitter? Unless it's fucking cigarettes or drugs or liquor. Nobody
Absolutely.
loves a quitter.
Yeah. You've done your share of interviews. This show, we do things a little bit different. We have a segment. Everyone's favorite part of the show is called Drop a Gem on Them. It's a word association game, places, spaces, songs, personal stories, anecdotes. Tell me what comes up for you. First song, Syl Johnson. Is it because I'm black?
Phil Johnson, is it because I'm black? Random ass piece of trivia that you probably wouldn't expect is that Selena Johnson, who had a major hit a few years back with Heard It All Before, is Phil Johnson's daughter.
Real. That's a good song. I have no
Right.
idea they're related.
She got it honest.
Wow.
Phil Johnson was notorious for his activism in his music.
Yeah.
Not only is it because I'm black, which is a diatribe to like, is the reason these things are happening to me and my people only because of the color of my skin? He had another song called Concrete Reservation, which was an homage to Native American life and the trials and tribulations that colonialism put the natives through, and the fact that the areas in the cities where people of color are relegated to be more often than not are reservations in and of themselves. So we have so much in common as indigenous folks, whether our indigenousness comes from the United States or whether we were taken from our indigenous spaces and the descendants of people who were forced to build this place that we live in. So Syl Johnson as an artist means a ton to me.
That's incredible information, much more than I knew. So thank you for sharing. That song is so phenomenal, so deep. You could feel the pain in his voice. It's incredible.
Yeah, and just the pocket, you know, it's a whole other connection to the church. You can hear all the gospel in that song, from the simple phrasing of the bass line and the guitar, the pocket of the drums. When you hear those, when I hear the drums on Is It Because I'm Black, the first hip hop producer that it puts me in mind of is Dilla, because there's a latency and a drag to it that's just this, musicians would say, it puts the stink on it. It's just something about the pocket of that record that's really infectious too, let alone the songwriting.
Next song, speaking of Dilla, Spacek, Eve featuring Frank and Dake, Jay Dilla remix.
Man, Eve featuring SpaceX and Frank and Dank. I first learned of Steve Spacek through his own group, Spacek, and through DJs like Giles Peterson and Benji B. And, Phil Asher, God bless him, Peter Darkwa, BBE Records, King Britt. Those are my real first introductions to Steve Spacek. And when I heard the Eve record, of course, immediately I wanted to have it, but I didn't know it was Steve Spacek when I heard it. I thought it was a woman, because Steve sings in that, it's like a high tenor, low falsetto. And I think it was like the last record of Steve singing that way before he became much more pronounced and out front as a vocal band leader. And I think that Dilla more than likely played some kind of role in bringing that out of him. And yeah, just the quintessential Dilla production. One of those moments where you're like, how did those two guys come together? What brought that about? And then when you buy the record and the artwork on the sleeve is by Mode 2. So it's like you got Detroit, London, and whatever part of France Mode 2 calls his origin space, all coming together on one project. So it's just a beautiful piece of art all the way across the board.
Next song, next artist, actually. Henley Franklin, The Skipper, song Soft Spirit.
Soft Spirit on the Henry Franklin album. Henry Franklin, The Skipper, is the fourth Black jazz album that I purchased on my way to completing my Black jazz catalog. And you just can't say enough about Black jazz records. You can't say enough about the obscurity and the brilliance of artists like Henry Franklin. I could be wrong, but I always had it in my mind that, was he part of the Art Ensemble of Chicago ever?
Not sure. I'm not
I
sure.
could be dead wrong. I could be fishing in the dark, but it's always been in my mind that he might have been. And when you think about labels like Black Jazz, you have to think about labels like Muse and Strata East and Jameson Toomey and Monty Alexander, the mainstream, the artists that made up this kind of independent jazz pressing world. These obscure pocketed clusters of records that if you don't know, you're just not going to know. And you got to know somebody that knows in order to learn anything about it. And lucky me, I tripped over Black Jazz Records dealing with a record dealer named Ozzy in Philadelphia in the 90s. And he always had tons of those records, but they were so expensive.
Yeah.
At the time, 1992, 1993, paying $100 for a record, it's like fucking mortgage.
Yeah.
you know. And in time, I was able to complete my catalog, and Like I said in the beginning, Henry Franklin was my fourth Black Jazz Records acquisition.
Next record, A Tribe Called Quest, Low End Theory album, Excursions.
Jesus. Excursions. That bass line and Q-Tip starting that record a cappella and his enunciation, calm, confidence, and clarity of expression for, roughly the same age as Tip. For someone at our age to be speaking so eloquently and so creatively in a vein that was a couple steps off the path of the way that you had grown used to absorbing rap records. You're dealing with an ego trip rapper or a party guy rapper or someone that's talking about their town or whatever. But the whole jazz aesthetic of Native Tongue Movement and Tribe Called Quest, it was not only represented in the music production, which you have to tip your hat to Tip again there, and you got to wonder how it fed his vernacular and his delivery, his way of making his point. And it's all talking about upliftment. And as we start trudging, me and my brothers, we be looking and be bugging. Vehicles of life, they be rolling and be nudging, searching for the versions of life that be shoving through the doors that's cracked. Like what an entry to a record, for a guy in his late teens, man, super eloquent.
It's nothing short of genius. Just me personally, is one of the first albums that I just listened to over and over as a young person, as a child, basically.
Yeah, man.
And when he said things go in cycles, the way that Bobby Brown is just acting like Michael, it made me realize something as a kid that I didn't understand all the cycles of music. And that light bulb is part of why I love music, digging for records, because it informs the future too.
100%.
Yeah. And that's the part that, keeps everything so exciting for me. Next album, James Brown, Black Caesar.
Wow. James Brown, Black Caesar album. Well, we could wax poetic about what James Brown represents to music culture in general for years on end. But talking about James Brown soundtracking a movie soundtrack with a character like Black Caesar leading the way. This is one of our first stories of, a hood superstar who, became famous. And even though some of the things that he did were kind of nefarious, he did it with a savoir-faire, with a class and a kind of a dignity to it. And he didn't take no shit from the white man. And to have James Brown score that film, considering how little shit James Brown took from the white man in his non-film scoring compositions. I mean, what a combination. What's the actor's name? Fred. Damn it. Sorry, his last name is escaping me. The lead actor in Black Caesar.
Let me look it up.
Right. God damn it. Oh, that's gonna drive me crazy.
Caesar.
Williamson?
His name's Fred Williamson. Yeah. There you
Fred
go.
Williamson. Oh,
Great
good.
memory.
I'm glad I was able to get that out. And he was like the first coming of your black lead. You had, well, not first coming. I take that back. I said that incorrectly. He's the fourth or fifth coming of the next black lead behind Sidney Poitier, James Earl Jones. Uh, we could go on and on with those names, Harry Belafonte, and then here comes Fred Williamson playing this tough guy gangster role, but with the same level of reverence and acting chops as the dramatic actors that came before him and carrying on that tradition, you know. And the James Brown soundtrack was impeccable, just as impeccable as the fur coats and derbies that the brother was wearing in the film, because the costumes in the film were crazy too.
Fela Kuti, Zombie.
Fela Kuti, Zombie. Fela Kuti, Zombie, I believe, is the quintessential anti-system song. We know our James Brown anti-system songs. We know our Bob Marley's. We know Salif Keita, Miriam Makeba, Hugh Masekela. But Zombie was a big, fat middle finger to the military-industrial complex. I'm basically saying that all these soldiers are basically zombies for the colonizer. Whatever the colonizer says, turn left, turn right, salute, put your gun down, pick your gun up, go kill these people, stop killing those people, whatever the system says, the zombie will do. And what a beautiful, eloquent way to express that sentiment. And interestingly enough, how fitting it is today.
Really well said. You've helped popularize Fela to a generation of people through your parties, through your teaching. And I think that's really important. He's such a critical figure, and having him even more well known than maybe 30 years ago is really important. And I want to tell you how much I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah. This is an off the cuff question, but it seems like there's some kind of connection between James Brown and Fela, as in not only their musical style, but their behavior, their kind of confidence, their superhero image. I just felt like, there's some influence and yeah, there's a common thread there that I think is really interesting.
Well, the common thread is Sandra Isidore.
Tell me more.
When Fela brought his band to the States for the first time and saw James Brown and saw the staple singers and all the black acts of the day that were making music for black people and for oppressed people. All those artists, that their crossover was accidental. They didn't make those records to be popular all over the world. They made those records to speak to the trials and tribulations of what it is to be under the heel of the colonizer. And that visit to the States and meeting Sandra Isidore, and Sandra Isidore going back to Calcutta with James and introducing him to the autobiography of Malcolm X and Franz Fanon and all the black power writers, James Baldwin, and all these black people speaking out in protest fearlessly against the system. It was proof positive to Fela that he had an obligation to do the same in Lagos, West Africa, which is, home of the point of no return. So if these Americans and these Jamaicans and these other folks can speak this way and find success, not only commercial, critical success, but find success in the people who they're speaking for, really championing them and getting behind what they represent. I mean, It's the birth of Afrobeat. You know, Fela was playing the Cooler Lobitos was a high life jazz band. You know, it wasn't until forming Africa 70 and going to the States and Sandra Isidore coming back to Africa with him that his whole pro black anti system posture shifted drastically.
That is fantastic knowledge. I'm really glad I asked. I mean, I learned
Me too.
something. Yeah, I'm really glad I asked. That's amazing. And you've given me a lot to kind of help my appreciation. So I appreciate that a lot. Next record, Sylvia Robinson, Sweet Stuff.
Most people our age or younger only know that record because of the Dilla record, I Want to Fuck All Night.
Yeah.
In the original tune, Sweet Stuff, she is singing to a man about how much she wants to be close with him. But she's saying it like a lady. She's saying it classy and beautifully melodically placed within this down tempo dance groove. It's not even like a ballad. You know, it's almost ballad tempo. The BPM is somewhere in the 80s, low 80s. So it comes across like a ballad, but there's a pep and an energy to it, and in her delivery. She's just singing this man, calling him sweet stuff, asking him to come to her. And Dilla, with his usage of the track and his production, just flipped that concept totally on its ear and made it really brash and aggressive and X-rated, but still so artistic and so creative. People that don't like cursing like that song. Only Dilla could do that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Ahmad Jamal, Jamalka album, the song Misdemeanor.
Ahmad Jamal's cover of it's a cover, first of all. The original of Misdemeanor was Foster Silvers and the Silvers family. And the Ahmad Jamal cover was a beautiful instrumental rendition of a well put together song. You know, some records don't need a cover. But then when you have a jazz great like Ahmad Jamal to remake such a tune and to put his own polish on it, just what a beautiful homage to the Silvers, and what a way for a keyboard player to make a song with a vocal lead his own through his fingers and his composition. Another tune on that record is Theme Bahamas.
Okay.
As you know, Jamalka, the entire album is his homage to the West Indies. So if you look across the span of the album and look at the song titles and listen to the topics on those records, yeah, Theme Bahamas is another really incredible composition on that album. The whole album is amazing, but those two jump off the page.
Heavily sampled, great album on its own. Beautiful music. Roberta Flack, Quiet Fire.
Well, so interesting that you would bring that record up, because Sunday and Sister Jones is one of the most important songs I've ever heard, and arguably still ranks as my favorite song. And it's Roberta Flack telling the story of a preacher's wife who's watching her husband die, and she can't do anything about it. And she would rather die with him than to continue living without him. and with a grandfather who was a preacher and a grandmother who was a choir director. That was one of the first secular records that I can remember my grandparents allowing to be played in their house with any kind of consistency. And because of that, it has always been part of my vocabulary. It's a record that I've brought with me and dealt with every day of my life.
Thank you for sharing that. I feel like these kind of inner feelings about records make them even bigger.
Absolutely.
Brand new heavies, sometimes JD remix featuring Q-Tip.
Man, the bombs. That's a lot of crazy choices, man.
Thank you. If it's one thing I could do is I could talk shit about music with people. So
Clearly, very well. You talk good shit about music.
thank you.
Brand new heavies. Sometimes JD remix featuring Q-Tip. Um, I've always loved the brand new heavies from day one. I've been an Andia Davenport stan from the start, but something about her over a Dilla production with Tip as the guest rapper and the guest rap actually being aligned lyrically with the songs that the singer or with the words that the singer is saying about, sometimes you got to do right. Can't always cut corners. You can't half ass it. Sometimes you got to do right. It was a plea. It's begging of the listener to consider applying a little bit more diligence, doing something with a little bit more effort, doing something to its completion rather than doing the bare minimum. Particularly in the conversation about relationships.
We've talked a lot about different records. You're a world famous DJ with a huge collection. I'm always curious, when you're not DJing in public for a crowd, describe how do you enjoy your records? Like, what's your experience in listening to your records?
My experience in listening to my records is that for the longest time as a working DJ, I would consume records for the sake of the ability to be versatile in presenting music to people. And I ended up enjoying music a lot less because it became a tool for my job because of the way I was receiving it and the way I would listen, mark the banger, mark the banger. This one's up tempo, this one's down tempo. Let me mark it. I'll get to it when I'm in the club, especially when I'm playing 3, 4, 5 nights a week. And today, when I'm at home, my enjoyment with records starts with me listening to the newest records that I've attained. And whether I listened to them in a store and bought them because I liked what I heard, or whether they were gifted to me, uh, listening to a record tail to snout is everything for me now. Yeah, especially, studying listening bar culture and studying jazz kissa culture as I was coming into ownership of a jazz kissa of my own. It also opened my eyes to the Japanese desire to force people to be quiet and listen to a full album in its entirety and allow that composition to complete itself. And hearing it in its completion versus hearing a single just gives you a greater appreciation for the producers and the composers and all the people responsible for making that record. You realize that it might be one name on the front that's leading things. There's a whole bunch of effort and diligence on the backside to make sure that that record can be a complete concept.
Let's touch more on Dante's HiFi. It is one of the world's most famous venues, especially to the kind of people who listen to the show. It is celebrating music in a very unique way. Tell us more how that got started and how you got involved with such a great project.
My three business partners, Sven Voglin, Alan Drummond, and Arturo Nunez, had taken a couple trips to Japan. And in going to Japan, they fell in love with the kissa culture. Kissa means cafe in Japanese. And these jazz cafes are these little tiny rooms with a high fidelity audio system, more often than not, floor to wall records on at least one wall, and an owner who is basically using his record collection as a public library to educate people on jazz. And making them highball whiskey cocktails, high-end Japanese whiskey at that, while listening to these records. And they came back to the States and decided that they wanted to open a jazz kissa concept in Miami. And I was one of a choice few guys that they reached out to that bring to the table what I bring to the table. And, these guys are already, well, two of my partners are already successful hospitality and food and beverage guys in Miami. My other partner had been a successful marketing executive across a span of corporate entities. And I've been doing business with all of them for the better part of the last 15 years as an artist, whether as a writer, a poet, or as a DJ. And they called me. I want to say it was towards the end of 2020. And they were like, what do you think about Miami? And I was like, well, I mean, you guys well know with the business that we've done together, I love Miami. And my kid's mom just got married, and my kid is in Florida now, 30 minutes north of Miami. So I have a whole different relationship with Miami now because my son is there. And in order to maintain thread between me and my son, I got to be in Miami more often. And they said, would you ever consider moving to Miami? I said, honestly, probably not. But I don't know, what are you getting at? And that opened the conversation into why they were reaching out to me in the first place, which was to gauge my interest in getting involved in a new place that they wanted to build. They showed me some renderings. They explained to me how they want to structure things and the fact that they needed somebody with a heavy working knowledge of records and record culture, and to basically be the music director of the space. And 3 or 4 Zooms later, I said yes. And after 30 years of living in Philadelphia, I packed myself up, packed my entire life up, and shipped my entire life to Florida in 6 pod containers. And surfed on people's couches and stayed in Airbnbs from April of 2021 all the way up until September of 2021 when we opened. And yeah, the rest is history. One of the biggest changes I ever made in my life, and one of the best decisions I ever made.
I want to congratulate you because you found this super high level of success in a way that's authentic to you, which is not easy in this world. So
No, I
salute you.
tell people all the time, man. Like they're like, "Oh, how's it going? How do you like Miami?" I'm like, I love Miami because I'm in Miami, living inside of my purpose as a creative and as a parent. To be back in the same zip code as my son, doing what I believe God put me here to do is priceless. I can't express it any differently than that. People would give up an arm or give up a finger for opportunities like this. So I'm definitely not here just to be another club guy. And praise God, the intent of Dante's with regard to music education, scope and range of musical styles, reverence to Japanese culture, jazz kissa culture, high fidelity audio culture, and being part of a business that's run by men of color. Man, what better combination of opportunity could someone like me ask for at this point in my career? It's a logical next step to go into ownership, and it's a logical next step to go into ownership that's wrapped around analog music presentation.
It's all well earned, and you're inspiring me and everyone who listens to the show to keep going and create something
Thank
where
you.
you find that alignment. So I want to salute you. So I usually end off the show on something more introspective. And
Sorry about that. My
yeah,
phone keeps ringing, but I didn't want to put it on the airplane
don't
because
don't sweat it. We're okay. Uh, Last question. So you've been successful in a very, let's say, windy road. I mean, you've gone through all kinds of unique accomplishments. And like we said, it may not all have been a straight line. And now you're on this high. If this next season of your life were to be a success, what would have happened?
if the next season of my life is to be a success, my son will finish college and be moving into where he wants to take his life. People who speak my name will be able to say that I did my best to leave people better than they were when I found them. And I would still be out here in the wild killing what I eat, you know? Um, yeah, man, just trying to apply pressure to the situation and get better, be better, remain the student, remain hungry, remain aggressive, work a little smarter, Well, I'm mid 50s now. I don't feel slow or old, but that math be mathing. And we got to do what we got to do with that. But
You look good, brother. You look young. You look healthy.
I, to the point of all this, I found a way to get money at what I love as a young man. And yeah, man, just to have affected people and affected the world in a positive way, and not in a positive way that's, I don't know, a song and dance kind of way, just by being inside of my calling and being inside of my path, for people to be able to say, damn, that guy worked his ass off and he made it look easy at the same time. And he left something out there for people to latch onto that they could possibly use for themselves, even if they're not in the music business. The stick to itiveness, toughness, the ability to take a punch and the ability to do things calm and easy and to be thorough.
Well, Rich, you've been incredibly successful. You're on such a high, and I see nothing but continued success in a way that's meaningful to you.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. And it's an honor to be here. Good interviews start with good questions. So don't shortchange yourself in this either. This is fantastic. I've done a million of these, but this was great today.
All right. Thank you,
Even
Rich.
Dookie likes it. Even Dookie likes it.
Oh, I didn't realize we had an additional audience there.
He's a,
Great face.
you know, them tipping in and out of here, like being nosy and looking at me the whole time. And he just came up on the couch as we were wrapping up.
That's all good. Appreciate your time, Rich. Thanks for your time.
Appreciate your time. Appreciate your interest, and can't wait to see it.
All right. Just give me 30 seconds of your time. Firstly, a huge thank you for checking out the show. This started off as an idea in my mind to see the growth, and the support from the beat digging community from around the world has been fantastic. Secondly, if you support what we do here, take a moment and join the 19% of listeners and subscribe on this app. It makes a huge difference. And my promise to you is to grow this show to make it even more of what you love. More guests, more interesting conversation, more beat digging knowledge. We appreciate your support. Peace.